year from the U.S. on a Fulbright scholarship studying the southern bent-winged bats at Narrocourt Caves. So the southern bent-winged bat is a critically endangered species listed under the EPBC Act of 1999. It's listed as critically endangered for several reasons. The first reason is that it has a highly restricted range. So it's found throughout southeast South Australia and southwest Victoria. And this distribution map was taken from the draft recovery plan for the species. The second reason it's listed as critically endangered is that it has a reliance on only 2 maternity caves. The first is Bat Cave in Narrocourt Caves National Park, and the second is Starlight Cave near Warrnambool, Victoria. Now this species is distributed throughout the region during the winter, when it overwinters in over 48 rocks and caves throughout the region. However, in late August, the bats begin returning to these breeding caves for the summer. And they return to one of the breeding caves, and the majority go to the bat cave population in Narrocourt, South Australia. And the third reason that this is listed as critically endangered is that the population has undergone severe declines. Beginning in the 1950s and 1960s, when population monitoring first began at Bat Cave, the population was about 100,000 to 200,000 bats there. In 2009, the estimate was down to about 20,000 bats. The Starlight Cave in Warrnambool has undergone similar declines from about 15,000 to 10,000 bats over the same time period. And this represents about a 67% decline over 3 generations. So there are many possible threats to the species, and I'll go through a few of these possible threats. The first is cave management. Several examples of these, one includes guano mining. So in the late 1800s and early 1900s, some of these caves were used to mine guano. The cave entrances, or the holes, were dug from the top of the cave, and this makes them unsuitable for the bats to roost in. Another possible threat is rubbish dumps. So some of the caves on private property have been used to dump trash, and this again can make them unsuitable for roosting. And third, the installation of gates to close these caves can affect the bats. The southern bent-winged bats do not typically like gates, even ones designed specifically for bats. Another possible threat is the loss and modification of foraging habitat. Since European settlement, over 90% of the native vegetation within the range of the species has been cleared. This can have impacts on the number and the diversity of prey available and can affect the bat population. Pesticides is another possible threat. Studies at Bat Cave and the Starlight Cave have shown pesticide compounds in both the bat guano and the bat tissue. And while we don't know if this is directly affecting the survival of the bats, it is a possibility. And disease. This picture was actually taken at Bat Cave. Over the past several years, there have been several outbreaks of various disease occurrences. These little ulcerations here were attributed to either a pox virus or parasites. And again, we don't know if this is directly affecting survival of the bats, but it may be. And finally, changes in food availability caused by drought can cause the populations to decline. Again, the past several years in South Australia especially have been hit hard by drought, and the insect availability may be down, which could affect the bat population. So while this species of bat is one of the most studied bat populations, there's still much to be learned about threats it faces and how it's doing as a species. So the purpose of my study was to accurately determine the population numbers and trends at the Bat Cave maternity site. In order to do this, I used 2 thermal imaging cameras outside the Bat Cave to take emergence counts. So here's the Bat Cave entrance, and we'd set up the thermal imaging cameras outside the entrance. The first camera was placed about 3 to 4 meters from the entrance, and the second camera was placed farther away, about 10 meters. And I occasionally use these 2 cameras and receive similar numbers from these counts. And so most of the time I only used the one camera. But because we got similar numbers from both cameras, we had confidence in those counts. I began taking counts in early September of last year, and I've taken 83 emergence counts since then, 44 of which I've analyzed, and I'm still working on the other ones. And how we analyze these counts is we have an automated counting system called Thermal Target Tracker that actually tags the thermal image of each bat as it comes in and out of the cave, and we can then count it automatically. So I don't have to sit there frame by frame counting 30,000 bats. And this is a video, so I'll show this is actually what we get, and the thermal image is overlaid by the system, and then we can count bats going in and out. So this was taken in February of this year when there were about 30,000 bats in the cave. And so what the program does is you create a polygon around the cave, and as the bat flies out this way, it counts it as going out. If a bat flies into the cave, it counts it as going in. And we get a minute-by-minute Excel file with a count of egress, ingress, and then the net emergence for each minute. And then we can get a total at the end. So what have I found? This is a graph of the date of each count and the number of bats in the counts. So the first thing to notice is that there was a general increase in the number of bats, especially early on in the spring. And this was expected as bats are returning from their overwintering sites to these caves. However, despite this general increase, we can see a lot of fluctuation throughout the summer. Within several nights, there may be an increase or a decrease of up to 10,000 or more bats in just those several nights. And the third thing to notice is this peak population that was taken on February 13th. It was a little bit over 40,000 bats. And if you recall, that is double the 2009 estimate of 20,000 bats. However, the 2009 count was taken before the pups started to fly, and this was taken after. However, the highest count we got from before the pups started to fly was 35,000 bats, which is still a 15,000 increase from the 2009 estimate. And this line just represents when the pups started flying. So what does this all mean? Well, the increase in the spring was expected, as these bats are returning from their overwintering caves to rear their young in the maternity cave. So that we expected. However, the regular fluctuations that we saw throughout the maternity season, we did not expect. We know that these bats are using over 48 caves throughout the region throughout the winter. But we thought that once they came back to the maternity sites, they stayed there for the entire summer until they left again for winter. However, these results show that this is not the case. And so it shows that bats are probably using these caves also during the summer. And that increase in the peak population size that I noted, 40,000 bats, since we saw a lot of fluctuation in the numbers, those bats are using these other caves. And the 2009 estimates were only taken 1 to 3 times per summer, and that's what's been done all previous counts. So we cannot assume that those are reliable counts because they may have been taken at times when a significant proportion of the bats were gone from the cave. So we therefore cannot assume a sustained growth in the population since the 2009 and earlier counts. So the take-home messages from all this is that regular monitoring throughout the year over multiple years is needed. Only with the regular counts did we note these fluctuations, and only with regular counts can we determine if the population is increasing or decreasing and make any conservation decisions based on that. And finally, we need to do summer and winter monitoring of the caves throughout the region to determine which of these caves are most important for these bats, and so we can target these caves for specific management. And with these two measures, we can continue to gather information that will aid in the recovery of this critically endangered species. I'd like to thank my funding sources and several people who provided lots of assistance throughout the project. Any questions?